Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. If you watched this channel before, you will know that I do like a little bit of boxing history. And for some reason, I can't even remember why, I think the subject was great defensive masters of the art. I started to think about a very great but often overlooked fighter, lightweight and very early, or relatively early, light welterweight world champion from Argentina by the name of Nicolino Locche. Okay, now a lot of you, particularly the younger fans, you might be thinking, who the hell is that? Well, as I say, it was from Argentina. And he finished with a record of 117 wins, only 14 KOs, 4 defeats, one of them by stoppage, which was to another great fighter, Antonio Cervantes. That was towards the end of his career. And he had 14 draws as well. Now, when you're thinking about that record, 117 wins, 4 defeats and 14 draws, you're probably thinking, why haven't I heard of this guy? Maybe if you're younger. Hardcore fans and people who like a bit of the history will have heard of him, of course. Because this guy was one of the great defensive masters. Brilliant defensively. I cannot emphasize that enough. An absolute maestro of the defensive arts. He was also an eccentric character, much beloved in Argentina. How eccentric was he? Well, it wasn't that uncommon between rounds, get this, to be puffing on a cigarette. I don't think he could have held it, but someone was, he was having a little drag on the fag. Yeah, what am I going to do next round? Kind of unconventional, to put it mildly. His training methods were, well, old school. We're talking about a fighter who fought from, I think it was 62, I think it was, up to about 1976, when he was past his best. Even though he was past his best, he still only had 4 defeats on his record. But he had old school training methods, and sometimes he was a little bit lackadaisical when it came to, being that disciplined, shall we say. But nevertheless, a brilliant fighter. Now, I think there are 2 main reasons why he's not remembered in a more mainstream way, for want of a better phrase. Number 1, as I say, he was from Argentina. He was a massive star in Argentina, massive star. But of all of those fights that I mentioned, 117 wins, 4 defeats, 14 draws, I think only about 3 or 4 were outside of Argentina. In fact, he won the World and Ring, actually. It was the WBA and the Ring Magazine super lightweight, or, well, it was called light welterweight back then. They now call them super lightweights, don't they? The 140-pound belt. He won that in Japan. Absolutely a great win. No doubt about it whatsoever. Well, that was against Takashi Fuji, who he forced to retire after 10 rounds. These, by the way, were old 15-rounders. So when you talk about going the distance in world title fights, you're talking 15-rounders. Okay. He then made 6 defenses before eventually losing the belt to Alfonso Fraser. And I think, if memory serves, the stoppage defeat, the only stoppage defeat of his career, which was against Antonio Cervantes, that was in a bid to retain the WBA and Ring Magazine titles, but he couldn't get past Cervantes, and he ended up retiring, I think, on a cut eye after 9 rounds. Was it 9 or 10 rounds? He had a cut eye and he got pulled out, basically. But he was past his best. By the way, one of his successful defenses was against Antonio Cervantes. A great fighter. Cervantes was himself a great fighter. How great was he? He's listed as having 67 wins, 12 defeats and 1 draw. So these were the days when fighters really fought. Right? They were fighting men, and they had to fight if they wanted to, build a legacy, make some money, and so on and so forth. All right. And like I say, Cervantes himself, a terrific fighter. shared 2 fights with Locche. So I think the fact that nearly all his fights were in Argentina, and the fact that at the time, I mean, you know, when did he win the title? 1970, was it 71? May have been earlier, actually. May have been 68, 69. So the light welterweights, or super lightweights if you prefer, had not really been that established. And also, if you do analyse Locche's resume, although he had a lot of fights, there aren't many, you know, people who'll be knocking on the door of the Hall of Fame, apart from Cervantes. He did fight what you would call, say, a lot of B- fighters. On the other hand, you can pick fault with a lot of people's resumes. People say the same thing about Julio Cesar Chavez, who had a very long and illustrious career. But there is padding on that record, you know. You can say the same about, I don't know, even if you look at someone like Vladimir Klitschko, who reigned for close to a decade as heavyweight champion. There aren't many killers on his record, are there? You know, apart from the fact that he was crushingly dull to watch. So you can pick fault with any of this. I mean, another great fighter who this criticism is levelled at is Jimmy Wilde, because he had an incredible career as a flyweight, you know, and I think he only lost 3 times and over 100 wins, something like 99 knockouts or something. But people say, yeah, but look at the quality of the opposition. It's poor. You know, okay, yeah, I get it, but quality of opposition, although it's obviously important when you're judging a fighter historically, you have to also factor in longevity, and you have to factor in the case of Wilde, he was a modern day strawweight fighting very often people who were super bantamweights and featherweights in the modern world. So Locche, even though he fought the first half of his career as a lightweight, he then moved up to 140, won the title, was recognised by Ring Magazine as a legitimate world champion. I would go as far as to say he kind of made the 140-pound division far more fashionable than it had been. And certainly when Cervantes defeated him and picked up the belt, well, I think he held the belt. He'd won it off Alfonso Frazier, if memory serves. And then, in fact, Cervantes was beaten by Aaron Pryor. Now, of course, Cervantes held the belt. He held 140-pound belts on more than one occasion, I'm sure of it. But by the time Aaron Pryor came along, that 140-pound division was red hot. You know, it was, and there was a lot of talk about Pryor moving up to face Sugar Ray Leonard for a while. Pryor, if you've never seen Pryor versus Alexis Arguello, they fought twice, but if you've never seen that first fight, it's one of the best fights you'll ever see. I mean, of any weight. Go and see Aaron Pryor versus Alexis Arguello. All right? I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. Unbelievable fight. Just absolutely unbelievable. But anyway, let's get back to Nicolino Locche. He's what this video is supposed to be about. He definitely made the division more fashionable. And if you ever see footage of him defensively, I mean, he would stand in front of fighters, the slightest movement, slip punches, didn't try to knock anyone out, which is why he only had 14 stoppages. He knew he didn't hit particularly hard, but he wasn't interested. He said, I'm going to slip and slide, and he stand right in front of you. He couldn't hit the bastard. You know, and people talk about Mayweather and, you know, Pernell Whitaker and others being great defensive fighters, which they most certainly were. There, you know, Wilfred Benitez, the prime Wilfred Benitez, almost impossible to hit. But don't forget Nicolino Locche, a great 140-pounder. So go and have a look at him. Go and have a look at him on YouTube or whatever, and tell me what you think if you're not familiar with him. A little bit of boxing history for you there. I do like a little bit of history, so we can sort of see how different divisions have progressed to become as reputable as they have been. Because if you're of a certain age, which I am, you will remember the birth of super middleweights. Murray Sutherland was the first super middleweight IBF champ, I think. You'll remember the birth of the cruiserweights. Now, of course, super middleweight and cruiserweight are very reputable divisions, but at the time they weren't. And in the case of the 140-pounders, I think everyone should tip their hat to the defensive maestro that was Nicolino Locche of Argentina. Have a look, tell me what you think. Thank you for watching this video. I always appreciate your support. Please like the video if you liked it, and also hit the subscribe button as well to build up the channel. Come on, you know you want to do it. All right, ladies and gents, you enjoy your weekend, and bye for now.